Hi and welcome to this WFA presentation on representation in marketing and some of the tough questions we all believe we need to start asking ourselves as marketers. We're here really to talk about the how. Lots of discussion in our industry about why this is important. Hopefully you agree with us that it is, and we're going to crack on and try and talk about how. And we're here today representing something called the WFA Diversity Task Force. It's a group of mainly World Federation of Advertisers members, but with some wonderful friends joining us on a mission to try and share a lot of the best practice that exists in this space, to convene people together, to curate what's out there, and ultimately be a bit of a catalyst and a challenger to drive more in the industry. My name is Jerry Dakin. I'm the EMEA Senior Media Director at GSK Consumer Healthcare. I'm not alone today in trying to talk to you about this. We'll be joined by Sarah, Managing Director at Saatchi, by Gonya, the Global Brand Director at Diageo, and by Dale, also a Global Brand Director at Mars. And together we're going to try and give you some different perspectives and experiences on how we're trying to solve for this problem, or even lean into this fantastic opportunity. And within the task force, we of course do think about internal diversity, the makeup of our teams and our industry, and we know there's a lot to be done there. But today we're really here to focus on the external representation, what we can do in the content we produce, in the advertising and the marketing we make. And we believe that's an area where we can all go on a journey together. We can all be sure that we're avoiding exclusion, avoiding not showing different groups and different diverse perspectives. We want to try and skip over the slightly interesting and not great stereotypical phase where unfortunately advertising can show and reinforce stereotypes, and it often has done over the years. And we really want to break those to unstereotype, as the Unstereotype Alliance would say, and to get to positive, progressive representation where our adverts really do just reflect the wonderful diversity of the consumers we serve. Now, many brands, many campaigns will choose to go even further than that into sort of deliberate positive representation. That's, of course, absolutely fantastic. But we think every advertiser can get to that first stage, and it's our jobs as marketers to do that. But we know even with the best intentions, even when you know you want to do this, it's not always easy. It's not always clear how to do that. And that's what we're here to talk about. And we're really excited to have just launched this new guide, a guide to creative bias across the entire creative process. And we've really broken it down into 12 stages that we think in reasonable detail goes through that process, right from the first brief and the insights through to when you're wrapping up and seeing what success looks like. And for each of those sections, we've tried to bring it to life and explain, what are some of the key questions you should be asking yourself there? What are some of the watch outs, the opportunities, and what also are some of the resources that can really help you to tackle those problems? This is just one sample slide. We're definitely not going to talk through it all today. And there's also a real opportunity to take that content, take that guide and make it work for your organization. At GSK, where I work, we've open sourced it, we've brought it in, we've combined it with some of our own thinking. And we really encourage all of you out there, not just to download the guide, but if you want to adapt it, to build on it. We'd love to get new case studies and new thinking from you. But today we're going to try and unpack the how, and we're broadly going to do it in these 4 sections, working our way through the phases. We won't talk about everyone by any means. We're going to start with the briefing. We're going to work through to the planning. We're going to talk about how you get it right during production. And of course, finally, how you go live and how you get your great work out there. And so without any further ado, let's pass over to our wonderful panelists and let's talk about how we can solve this together. So let's start with the briefing. And in the guide we produced, there are 3 questions that we really flagged there. What steps are you taking to make sure your brand is accessing all the diverse opportunities for growth? How are you ensuring your strategy is grounded in diverse consumer insight? And are you bringing inspiration and deep insight to the brief? All of which says that, the whole marketing process can go quite badly wrong if you don't start with a really good brief. And sorry to put you on the spot, SJ, but I'm sure you and your team have been the receiver of some fantastic and perhaps at times some less brilliant briefs in this space. So for you, what's important to get right in the brief? How do we make sure the process gets off to a good start?
Yeah, I've been lucky. I've definitely received some fantastic briefs in the space and receiving more of them as well. A good brief should inspire, but it doesn't need to surprise. I think the best briefs are built together, they're built collaboratively, and the written brief comes at the end of a very long process of the agency and the client working together. So make sure diversity is hardwired into the team, hardwired into the relationship, and that's how we're going to get the best diverse briefs coming out as well. And my favourite briefs also have the commercial goals hardwired to diversity as well. So there's a genuine commercial uplift to doing the right thing.
Brilliant. Dale, if I could bounce it over to you, you're at the other side of that equation, often helping create and sending out the briefs. What have you learned in your experience really makes a great brief and makes it work?
I think really understand your market. And by that, look at the demographic data, look at the different cohorts within that. Don't treat everybody the same. So, for example, if you look at US census data, millennials are far more diverse than some older age groups within the US market. And therefore, depending on who you're communicating to, who you want to be representative of, don't just look at the whole, look at the groups within that and understand what are some of the intersections, what are some of the different diversities that will happen on different parts of the population, and reflect that in the brief. I think building on that as well, be careful of generalizations. How often have I written a brief that starts to mom or to housewives aged X? Perhaps not that inspiring for a creative to give them the hook, but also, why have I assumed if it's, say, a food product that only women would consume it? Well, of course they won't. And yet I may have led the creatives down a certain route, or Sarah's team. I've already planted in their mind who they're targeting. And I may have completely unintentionally done that just by not thinking through who am I really reflecting when I write the brief.
Brilliant. I think it's very true. We can lose a lot of fantastic marketing right at the first stage if we don't capture that interesting diversity, that interesting nuance in our consumers. And then, of course, we want to move on into the planning phase and how we actually think about what we're going to do based on that brief, based on that insight. And again, in our guide, we've got 3 key steps throughout those phases that we call out. The first one is, what steps are you taking with your suppliers to bring in more diverse talent? Are you keeping diversity top of mind at all stages of the creative process? And does your testing and learning plan incorporate representative audiences? There's a lot going in there, making sure we have the right people in the room, the right opinions, the right perspectives. And we know we're not perfect as an industry. We know we have a long way to go on our internal diversity. Gonja, if I can throw it to you, I know Diageo has been really positive in terms of driving opportunities in this space. What do you think is the role of the client and then the agency in making sure that we do have diverse perspectives on our work?
Yeah, Jerry. I mean, look, at Diageo, like, we're one of the world's leading advertisers. So we really believe that we have a role and a responsibility to help shape a more progressive industry as well. So, for example, one of the ways we do that is to really agitate for change beyond our brands and beyond our own business. And for example, we annually do a survey of how our agencies across our full global roster are doing on all aspects of D&I, and we ask very specific questions. For example, how many women are in senior leadership roles? What's the makeup of the creative leadership team? Information on the gender pay gap, and so on. And one of the things we recognised, the first time we sent that out actually, was that there is a huge gap in terms of gender in creative leadership in the industry. So and we wanted to understand more about that. We wanted to understand what is getting in the way of women moving up through the ranks of the creative departments in our partners, in our agencies. And we identified that actually a lot of women had left the industry because they had caring responsibilities or illness or other factors that came in and caused them to leave. And then when they were trying to get back into the industry in return, there was a gap in terms of their portfolio and their book, and their work just wasn't kind of as up to date as the people they were competing with for those roles. So we partnered with an amazing organization, Creative Equals, to create a creative comeback program, which ran in New York and London, and we're about to roll it out in India as soon as it's safe to do so, and also into Australia. And that's really helping to land women back into the industry. But across all aspects of D&I, I think the role we have as clients is to really say, look, whoever is making the work, having diverse representation in that room, having diverse representation behind the camera, whether that's through also making sure through things like triple bid that you're getting a really diverse slate of talent coming through, whether directors or DPs or, throughout the entire production process, because we know that the more diversity, the more diverse perspectives, the better and richer the creative is going to be. And we really believe that. We think we have a big role as clients, and I'd encourage all clients to think about the full supply chain and how, together we can all amplify what's possible on that agenda.
And SJ, I don't think we're in any way throwing all the responsibility on your side of the table, but as an advertising agency, what are you guys at Saatchi & Saatchi, what are you trying to do to solve for this?
Yeah, well, I love what you said there, Grania, because as clients, you're so powerful. Nothing's going to create change quicker than you asking us to do something, because we respond to those sort of client requests, particularly when you're going through a pitch process where you've got a very established relationship, as I'm sure you've got, Diageo. So asking the question, asking to see the data, and asking to see what the strategy is year on year, that will create change, and it will change the composition of our agencies super quickly. I'm super proud of Saatchi & Saatchi. We've been doing a huge amount in this space, making sure our pipeline's right. So we have Saatchi Ignite, our schools program, which is a 7-year investment, bringing creativity to kids as young as 11 and work with them for 7 years. We've got Saatchi Open, so we've re-engineered how we do our entry level, and Saatchi Home. So we recognise we can do all this, but London is so expensive. If we don't find a way of creating affordable accommodation, the kids from less privileged backgrounds won't be able to work in our industry. So attack it systemically, attack it with some energy and creativity, and tell people you're doing it, because that speeds things up as well, because then you have to follow through.
Brilliant. And Gonya, I mean, we could do a whole webinar just on this one topic, so we'll have to try and boil it down. But one of the things we reference in our guide is the Unstereotype Alliance 3 Ps framework. And the spirit of our guide was definitely to pull in great work that's already out there. And that's a perfect example of that. But for those who don't know, what is the 3 Ps framework, and how does it help us navigate this topic of representation?
Yeah, so first of all, just quickly, the Unstereotype Alliance is a UN women-convened body that's really tasked with tackling harmful stereotypes across all aspects of D&I. And together with Unilever, we partnered together, and also other Unstereotype members, to really pull together some of the best thinking in this space, because a little bit like the WFA guide we're talking about today, like what everybody really is looking for is very practical, simple tools that you can embed within your organization and that will help you make work that doesn't fall into some of the traps that are so easy, by the way, because of unconscious bias and all of our factors that have shaped and influenced us in terms of making the work. So having something really simple, and the 3 Ps framework can be used at all stages of the creative development process. And really the 3 Ps are, first of all, presence. So that's all about who are we actually showing in our communications. The second of which is perspective. So who's really directing the action and holding on to that narrative. And then finally, personality. Are the characters we're showing rich, and have they depth and meaning, and are they authentic? And that really helps us avoid some of the most common traps of stereotyping in content, which can lead to tokenistic or exclusive casting, etc. So very, very simple tool available on the Unstereotype Alliance website, and I'd encourage, a little bit like the WFA guide, for people to use it, look at it, figure out how to make it your own. We found it incredibly helpful at all aspects of content development.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, we've tried to embed it in our process at GSK as well. Just they're really simple, good questions to be asking to make sure we are representing well on the screen. And of course, as we move past that phase into the actual production phase, we actually make our content, make our adverts. That's, really exciting time, but it's often a very pressurized time and often a very challenging time, especially many of us work on big global brands trying to produce content that works in all sorts of different parts of the world. So again, we flag a few key questions you can ask yourself there. Are you keeping diversity top of mind at all stages of the production process? Are you checking back to ensure the final edit delivers on your vision? And are you considering that local nuances and ensuring that both global and local impacts of your decisions are considered? And Dale, I might come back to you on that one. Snickers is a fantastic, huge global brand. It's got a established brand platform, but even on something like that, you're having to create a lot of different realizations of that around the world. How do you, as a kind of global brand director, kind of juggle that, make sure that by the time work gets into market, it really still stays true to some of your positive intent?
Absolutely, it is a campaign we're very proud of, but we want consumers to see themselves in the advertising. We want to be as diverse as the people who consume our products. And to do that, it's like, well, who's appearing in our advertising? As you say, as you're doing a global campaign, how can you reflect that? Because there are tensions. You want the economies of scale, you want the efficiencies, and at the same time, you want to be representative of the people who see in the advertising. And everyone's not the same all around the world. So there's a few things we do to try and tackle that. Sometimes if we're making a campaign that is going to travel across markets, I'll work with our local teams when we're doing casting to make sure that in totality they can recognize themselves and their populations within the cast that we use. So by having a mix of different characters and people and actors within the storytelling, we can cover off different markets that way. Sometimes we'll use shadow shoots. So within the same production, we will shoot the ad various times with different casts in different languages. So we will produce several versions of the same story at the same time so that we can be more representative locally. And sometimes we'll reshoot the ad. Sometimes, so for example, there's a lot of sport features within Snickers advertising. And what can be a football changing room in the UK becomes a cricket locker room within India. It allows us to use local talent. It allows us to actually use local jokes and language and really finesse it so that it really resonates with the local consumer. But it's the same story. It's just the setting and everything is different. And that way you can take what you see as the same universal insights that people have, but translate it into something that's far more local and far more representative. So there's different ways we do it with different parts of our storytelling. I wouldn't say there's a one-size-fits-all answer, but always in my mind is, how can I be representative with who's appearing in front of the lens?
Brilliant. I think, coming into land, it's the exciting time when we finally get to put our campaigns live, when we get to launch. A nerve-wracking time at times, but an exciting time. And again, we've got 3 phases and 3 questions we'd ask there. Have you reviewed your media plans to ensure they're progressive and appropriate? Have you considered, as part of your launch plans, the impact amongst different diverse groups, and how are you building your knowledge, effectiveness and insight? And another part of the WFA I'm proud to be a part of is the Global Alliance of Responsible Media, the GARM, which is really trying to solve for some of this. We talk a lot about the creative, but media has a voice here as well. Are we funding the right stuff? Are we putting our content in the right places? And I really think that's a rich topic to unpack. But just as we come in towards the end here, when progressive work does go live, there's often a big reaction. And I think generally, almost universally, a hugely positive one vastly outweighs the negative reaction. But we all know there can be negative backlash, and often it's hard as a marketer, as a brand manager, to hear that. SJ, I guess you've probably worked with a lot of clients preparing themselves for that. What advice do you give to people in terms of what does happen when great but challenging work goes live?
I think we have to acknowledge that we're potentially going backwards in society, that we have such loud and happy to troll people out there. I don't think this would have happened 10 years ago. So we're at a point where brands have such a huge responsibility to do the right thing. And I think for every troll and every complaint, it is proof that we're doing the right thing. So I take those bricks and I take those insults, and I think that's proof that we're on track. So what I say to clients, we start upstream and start early. So go to the most senior clients, make sure we've got their buy-in and their understanding, working super closely, obviously, with the PR department within each client organisation, making sure we're prepared, we're ready to go, we've got a dashboard ready to respond when we need to, make sure that the organisation at a very wide level knows what we're doing and we're responding in kind. And as with all these things, we can prepare for it. We know we're doing the right thing, stay brave, and the results will come. And I think staying close to the case studies too. So whether it's Sainsbury's last year having an all-black family, and their response to that, and then seeing some other incredible brands getting involved as well, making sure we collect those case studies, show the ROI, show how much more positive headlines there were to negative headlines, and demonstrate we're making progress with every genuine progressive move that we make. But I cannot stress enough how powerful brands are to make sure that we make the world a better place.
And brilliant. I'm afraid we've more or less run out of time there. I think it's been a fantastic conversation. But Gonya, if I came to you for our very final question, I think, you can come to the end of this process and you're not finished. You've got to keep learning. What's your advice to businesses, organizations, just trying to embed this, trying to keep on getting better? How are you guys approaching that?
Yeah, look, I think exactly as SJ and Dale gave great examples of, like, getting this right is quite complex, quite nuanced, culturally determined. And I think therefore making sure that you've the right measurement tools around what you're also trying to achieve is really, really important. So, for example, in Diageo, in our pre-testing for creative work, we actually track how progressive our work is. And likewise, in our post-tracking, when we're tracking how effective it is, we're also tracking how we are doing against more progressive portrayal as well. And that's not about having kind of a pass-fail type of mentality. It really is about building up a body of learning as to, how are we getting it right? Where are we getting it wrong? Where do we need to push further? What are some of those cultural nuances? And really making sure that we're understanding how those ads perform in the real world with real audiences as well. So a learning journey.
And yeah, I think we're all on that journey together, and hopefully this guide will help more of us fast track that. So do go on the WFA website, do download it, and we'd love to hear back from you guys on other ways that we can build on and improve it. But that's what we've got time for today, so thank you very much. So I think we do have a quick Q&A now. If you have got questions you'd like to ask us, then we'd love to hear from you.